The club is blue.
It's alright.
The club is blue.
It's alright.
Charles, you gotta go.
I'm videotaping that.
Where did they go?
Hey, what's going on, guys? And thanks for tuning in again. My name is Charles, and you are watching The Real Charles J. And so before we get started, as always, I just want to remind you guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that little bell so that way you get notified the next time I put a video up. And so today, yeah, I think I'm going to start calling these the Friday Feels. Yeah, I don't know. It just seems kind of weird. And when I decide to start filming these things, it's starting to really just turn into me ranting about what I feel about certain subjects. And so I think what I'm going to do is start changing how I film these things and the days that I film them. And I don't fill them. I am filling it, and that's what I'm talking about. But Friday rants just doesn't sound funny, so I think the Friday feels actually sounds a little bit better. Note to self, though, I don't actually film this on Friday. I film it on Thursday. I edit it, and then I put it up on Friday. But you're welcome. Today is the Friday feels. So I hope you enjoyed that little bit in the beginning about me golfing. That was just an utter, complete failure. What's even funnier about that is I think we were betting lunch or something like that, and so it was like, hey, whoever can hit the furthest gets, lunch for free. And so that was one of my first times going out to the driving range, and well, you saw what happened. I completely failed, and so that I just thought that would be a funny bit to start with. But today we are talking about the fear of failure, and so there's just a few things I want to comment on. A few things I want to bring up. I know other people have had these types of issues. You're dealing with what happens when you're rejected, what happens when you try to do something and it just doesn't work out. You're trying so hard to make something work for yourself, and it's like you're trying, and then you get that little voice in your head that tells you you've become a failure. And that's probably one of the hardest things to deal with as a human. No one likes to feel like they can't achieve what they're trying to do. And so being labeled a failure just, I guess, seems to be a default. When we don't live up to the expectation, we start to put those titles on ourselves. And so I started thinking about this. I was like, well, if I'm going to talk about being a failure, I need to brush up a little bit on what I'm doing. And so I went to the dictionary, as everyone should. When you start talking about who you are and what your identity is, and you start calling yourself something, you should probably know what that expectation is. And so I went to dictionary.com. This is in no way an advertisement for them. This is just what I use. I have an app. I also have the Merriam-Webster app. And so I looked it up in both of those. And in dictionary.com, I found 9 different definitions. All 9 of those definitions only had to deal with an action, like the act of failing, going bankrupt, it being the cause of something that didn't go right. And so I thought that was kind of interesting that there were 8 definitions for that. But the 9th one is what really stung me. The 9th one talked about a person being a failure. Like you are failing as a human being. And when I stopped to think about that, I was like, dude, that kind of sucks. Like, we've come to this part in society where we've said it's okay to call yourself a failure. It's okay to be like, you're not enough. And I just, part of me just kind of sunk. And so because of that, I decided I didn't like what I found. So I went to Merriam-Webster. Merriam-Webster does not give a definition of a person being a failure. It says a person can fail, but once again, we're going back to it's the result of your actions, not who you are. And so that kind of got me thinking. I thought that was kind of interesting that we would have two different sources, both which, some people might say are, widely credible, yet one wants to label a person, the other one doesn't. And I think that's kind of interesting, and so I did like every other good person would do. I went to Google. And sure enough, the one thing that I wanted to Google was quotes about failure. As soon as I Googled quotes about failure in Google, I got a hit from Goodreads, and Goodreads has 2,590 quotes about failure. And so I said, well, that's not too bad. I mean, there's tons of stuff out there. Sure, why not? But then the kicker is when I Googled success. If you Google quotes about success, your first top 3 hits will give you less than 100 quotes. Think about that for a second. When you Google how to succeed in quotes about being successful, there are less than 100 quotes that come up. Now, obviously, I like to use source against source because that's just how I like to roll. So if I'm going to compare and contrast different things, I want to know what the like for like is. So as I continue to scroll through the search results, I came across Goodreads. Goodreads had, I think, close to 10,000 quotes about success. And I'm doing this live here. 10,727 quotes about success. So it got me thinking, why would Google want to put the first 3 hits that have the least amount of quotes about success? And here's why. We'll talk about this. If you think about how you deal and how you cope, people don't want you to be better than them. Oh, I know, that hurts, right? I said that. People genuinely do not want you to be better than them. Now, I'm not saying that they wish harm against you, and I'm not saying that they wish the worst, but I am, however, saying that I want you to do good as long as you're not doing better than me. That's kind of weird, to think about. We live in that type of society where we want to hold each other down. And that kind of freaks me out to think that this is the day and age that we're living in. And you go, well, Charles, that's not the same. We're living in an age where, tolerance is on an all-time high, where we think about equal rights, and we think about so many movements and feminism and socialism and everything else that's going on. How could you say that people don't want you to succeed? Well, I'm going to break your heart and tell you that the natural part of who we are does not want you to see someone else succeed. If you're doing better than me, something's wrong. We call it keeping up with the Joneses. It's having that need and that feel to want to have what someone else has. You want to achieve what someone else wants to achieve. And there's nothing completely wrong with that until you start identifying yourself that way. And that's where it becomes a problem. You see, Merriam-Webster is a collection of definitions that has withstood ages. Yeah, it gets changed here and there, but it usually goes up to a committee. There's usually a process, and it's not just like, hey, we want to change this, let's put it out. Dictionary.com, however, doesn't have that type of stringent process to really weed out what shouldn't be in there. Heck, if you want today's definition for anything, go to urbandictionary.com, and you can find what the latest phrases mean to the people today. However, Merriam-Webster keeps it a little bit more true. And in fact, when you look at the history and the etymology of how failure came to be, it was never meant to be a way that we identify ourselves, but rather a way of explaining the failure of an action or something that was an unmet expectation. Do not label yourself as a failure. You are not a failure. No matter how many times you do something wrong, no matter what you think is going on in your life, you are not a failure. And so if you take away anything from this video today, I want you to know that there's many ways to do things wrong. There's many ways to do things right. But that doesn't define who you are. You are still a person. You are still a human being. You're someone with a brain. You're someone with eyes. You're someone with ears. You're someone with a smile. You're someone with a personality. You are one of a kind. Do not let anyone label you a failure. In fact, do not label yourself a failure. You know, there's a lot of different quotes that we read, and there's things that we talk about when we talk about failure. One of the most famous ones that we hear everywhere in movies and TV shows is Thomas J. Edison, who says, "I have not failed, I have found 10,000 ways that won't work." Again, he's talking about the end result of something he did, not who he is. That's the separation that we need to start creating in our own lives. When we start thinking about success and what drives you to success, it should be, how do I better myself? Not focusing on what my past was and defining myself by what my past was. In fact, a friend actually sent me something on Instagram today, and it was a religious thing. It wasn't something comedy related, and so alert. I'm gonna talk Christian now, so if this isn't your bit, feel free to leave. But one of the things that he was talking about was wrestling with God. And in fact, he said, I wouldn't trust, he had heard someone say, do not trust a pastor who doesn't have a limp. And he repeated the phrase until he really stopped to understand what it was. And what he was talking about was Jacob in the Bible, who's someone who wrestled with God. He didn't want to let God leave him until he gave him an answer, until he gave him the blessing that he was looking for. He was looking for his breakthrough, and failure was not an option. Jacob knew that he wasn't going to fail, and so he was going to fight and do whatever it took to get God to respond to him. Now, that's a bold move. I'm not telling you to fight the powers to be completely until you get your way. We can call that stubbornness too, So there's a very fine line that goes both ways. But what I want to take away from that is that many times we seek for ways to help us compromise with how we fail and to make it okay. I'm going to say that again. Many times we look for ways to compromise in how we feel to make failure okay, instead of looking to fight through that and say, I want what's mine. And that's the challenge that I want to bring to you today. Maybe you've stopped fighting. Maybe you've stopped looking for ways to reach achievements. Maybe you stopped setting goals. Maybe you've set your goals way too far, too high, that are way out of your reach. And now because you can't reach any of that, you feel like a failure. I'm telling you, you need to start small. You need to start with today. You need to start with, I got up and I took a shower. Some people can't take a shower right now. They don't have running water. Some people don't have electricity. They can't take a hot shower. Your goal today needs to be, I woke up and took a shower. I brushed my teeth. I got in my car that had gas in it and I drove to work today. If you're not quarantined, stay at home. We don't want you out on the street if you shouldn't be out. I'm just kidding. But set your goals small. Find out, what are you living for today? What are you doing to reach what you need to reach today? Set your mind on things that bring positive thoughts, positive ideas, positive goals into your life. I've been single for quite a while. I've actually become okay being single. I probably prefer it, to be honest. It's kind of weird. But it's mostly because I enjoy who I am, what I do, and the small goals and the things in my life every day that make me happy and that make me smile. If you cannot find that for yourself, you are going to hurt yourself. Emotionally, you're going to hurt yourself. Scholastically, you are going to hurt yourself. Mentally, you are going to hurt yourself, to the point where maybe physically you might hurt yourself. That is not okay. It is simply not okay. The people that are around you love you. The people that are around you see the potential that you have. Do not let your past define you, but instead reach out to the people who are around you and ask them, hey, what do you see in me? It's a dangerous thing to stand in front of the mirror and ask yourself, what do I see? Because we always want to focus on the negative. And that's what I want to get back to with that Google search. We're always focused on the negative when we forget the positive. That's that main reason why the top 3 searches when it came up to success were so small.
because we're not focused on success. We're focused on our failures. And you go, yeah, but me knowing my failures helps me push to the next one and it helps me become better in who I am. Yes, for some people that is true, but for the vast majority of most of us who walk around, that's not exactly true. And so if you focus on those things, what you're going to find is you're going to be coming short really quick. And so there's 3 practical ways that we can kind of overcome that every day. The first thing is to be thankful for being alive. That's the first step. The second step is to be thankful that we have privilege. And I'm not talking about white privilege. I'm not talking about male privilege. I'm not talking about any type of political stance. I'm talking about the fact that we have the freedom and we live in a country where we're able to get up every day and make our own decisions. Some dictator isn't telling us we need to do X, Y, and Z. If I want to go to the store today and buy a chocolate bar, I can go to the store and buy a chocolate bar. If I want to sit at home and watch cartoons, even though I'm 33 years old, I can sit at home and watch cartoons until my job asks me why I'm not there, and then I might be fired. Yeah, probably not a good idea. However, I still have that ability to make that choice. So the second thing you need to do is be grateful about the freedom and about the privilege that you have. And the third thing that you really need to be thankful for is that there are people around you. If you do not know who those people are around you, who can encourage you, who can love you, who can push you away from your failure, then that means you're not reaching out to them. I know in my last video, I kind of talked about, depression. I kind of talked about a lot of different things, but this kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of that stuff that I talked about before. The effort, yes, should be made both ways. People should reach out to each other, introverts versus extroverts. However, if you know you're going through a tough time, you're feeling like a failure, you're just feeling down and out, please reach out to someone. And in fact, there's many other ways that you can do it. You can meditate, you can breathe. There's tons of different exercises that you can do to help get yourself out of that. But the number one thing you need to remember is that you are not a failure. Face your fears, and yeah, maybe you might, fail in facing what you're facing, but you don't stay down, you get up again. There's a proverb that says when a man falls off his horse, he gets back up. That's the difference. You can be the man that falls off, or the woman, or the person. You can be the person who falls off and stays down, and then the horse walks away from you, and that's the end of it. Or you can be the person who falls down, and you can get back up, try to get back on the horse until you finally do what you need to do. Do not stop living. Do not give up. Do not stop fighting for what is yours. You can make a difference in this world. You have a career waiting for you. You have dreams and desires and things that were put inside of you. And there are good things waiting for you. But if you stop looking for them, you're only going to find the bad things. And so I'm sorry to make this a rant, but this is my Friday feel. And so I've gone through this. It's hard. It's tough. I'm not going to lie. But when you learn to push through it and you learn to identify with who you are versus how you failed and what you've done before, I guarantee you'll walk into a better place where you're going to feel much better about who you are and what you're doing. Don't define yourself by everything that's happened to you. Look to tomorrow and say, there's a future ahead of me. And I can either try and walk towards that future, or I can let the past drag me and keep me right where I'm at and keep calling myself a failure. I broke that club. I wasn't trying to break that club. However, I bought some clubs and I decided to go back to the driving range. I haven't broken a club since. I could have stopped right there and said, golfing isn't my thing. I'm a failure. Instead, I decided to look at it head on, and I decided to take it up and try it again until I felt so comfortable driving that ball that I knew I wasn't going to break another head. The choice is yours. Sit here today and call yourself a failure and keep being a failure. Or what you should do is learn to stop and think about who you are. Because a failure is not a person. A failure is not your identification. The failure is just an action. So be a person. Don't be an action. Be a person in action. Do something right. Love yourself. Love the people around you. And as always, just spread it. Spread it. Don't keep it to yourself, but spread it everywhere you go. And so I hope that helps someone today. If you have any tips, leave them in the comments. If there's anything else that I missed and that you would like to add, please leave it in the comments. You never know who's reading. Someone can always take away from this, and there's so much more to learn about this. There's so many ways we can help each other, and so I hope this has helped you. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so that way you get notified when I post this next video. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Charles, and you are watching The Real Charles J. See you guys.